Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Caped Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our returning friend, Kavin Kaufmann of I Have a Demon. We're here to break down their brand new Chapter 17 and some big news for I Have a Demon and much more. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back. How have you been since you last been on?
I've been good for sure. I've been feeling really good. Everything's been going smoothly. So I'm excited to be back on the show. Thanks for having me.
That is so awesome. I'm excited to have you back too. It's been what I would say about a month since our last interview.
I think it was a couple months. I think the last one was in June.
June, yeah. Time flies though. Shoo.
I know. Where did the summer go?
And we covered roughly chapter 1. We're gonna be looking at chapter 17 though, so a little bit of a skip. But you can find all of those chapters on Global Comics as well. So for anyone who's tuning in for the first time here, give us a little bit about who you are and the type of comic that you create.
Sure. So like Cody said, my name is Kavin. I'm transgender. So that's like the biggest thing about me. I incorporate a lot of that into the series. My husband and I both, we like to incorporate personal challenges into the story as well. So a lot of our characters have experienced things that we've experienced, or at least have had people close to us experience. We like to draw from the real world, even though the world itself is a fantasy. So the basis behind I Have a Demon basically just kind of starts off talking about like how, I grew up very sheltered. So my main character grew up very sheltered. And it shows that throughout the journey, how he expands and develops as a person and comes to terms with himself and faces all these new challenges. And then each character individually has a complicated and difficult backstory that leads to who they are at the end of the story. And they all intertwine in one way or another. So it's going to be very, very intricate to write, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. But I think it will be worth the investment for anyone who's interested in demons or who likes comics with campy LGBT characters. Or anyone who's a fan of Berserk, because there's going to be a lot of pain.
That's Naruto, though, right?
Yeah.
There will be pain. We have Alan Russet over on YouTube, just here to support fellow creators. Have fun. Cody's a great host. Alan, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate your kind words and the chance that we had to break everything down on your end as well. It's always awesome to see other creators start to return and trickle into the live stream. Because in the end, it kind of just feeds into itself. It makes the show that much bigger for the next show. I'm grateful for it. So you told me, you gave me a little bit of indication backstage that there was some changes coming to the way you guys are creating comics. So how is that? What are we looking at in terms of, what to expect for chapters, in the future?
Yes. So some people may have noticed that starting with chapter 16, we did start reformatting some of the pages. And the reason being was because the further we got into this portion of the story, we realized that Webtoon's restrictions were going to be too strict. So we knew we were gonna have some difficulties with kind of toning it down and censoring some areas.
The restrictions, if you don't mind me interrupting.
So just in terms of like what they have for like violence and like some of the character outfits like would be inappropriate, and I don't really feel like that's something that needs to be censored. So it felt like it was gonna be taking away from the actual story. So I wanted to expand to another area that would allow us to tell it the way we want to. So as much as we have started on Webtoon, and they've definitely been an excellent platform for us to get our feet wet, we thought that it would be in our best interest to kind of move over and start expanding our options. So we do still have chapters 1 through 16 available on Webtoon. We were originally going to stop posting after the end of this arc, which was chapter 25, but we decided to kind of just taper off, just given the fact that we just felt it wasn't going to be beneficial for us. But like I said, the censored versions are still available on Webtoon. The uncensored versions will all be available on Global Comics. And the in terms of the reformatting, we're going from vertical scroll to page by page, which is the way that it was intended to be written. So a lot of the early chapters eventually are going to be redone.
That answers one of my questions I already had loaded up too. So what's that move look like for you, though? I know you said you had all your catalog on Global Comics, but it has to be somewhat of a hit to be leaving webcomics, right? Because that's where you started. That's where I would imagine that a big chunk of your audience would be.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those things where it's like, you know, parting is sweet sorrow. You know, it's going to be sad to not be really a part of the Webtoon Canvas community anymore as much as we were. But at the same time, I feel like for the sake of telling our story, I think it's important. Especially since we're getting to an arc where pretty much all of it would have to be censored, and we wouldn't be able to do it in a way that would make it readable.
Sounds like one hell of a ride.
It's kind of going 0 to 60. So we're gonna take off pretty fast. Because the arc that's coming up, which is another one of the changes that I was going to address, is actually going to be, the art is going to be done by my husband.
Okay.
So we're going to kind of go back and forth. And this is an arc that he wrote, and they're his characters that he's created, and he's going to be doing the art and the scripting and all of that. And we're going to be working very closely together on it just to kind of fill in gaps and things like that. But we're doing that so that we can kind of keep it balanced so it's not too much work for either one of us.
I was gonna say that must be like a nice little break for you to kind of like be able to like, you know, kick back and relax a little bit.
It's definitely a reprieve, and it's nice because we each get to put our own individual touch. You know, like we've created our own characters, we've written the whole story, but now it's like they look at it and all they see is my art. And that's not fair considering we're both artists, we're both working on it. How can we fix this? Well, let's both draw it. You know, so we're gonna be taking turns with that and kind of alternating. And he's actually been drawing a lot of the title pages as well. So most of the title pages that have been on the recent chapters, he's drawn and I've colored. So we've been.
So his art's been integrated already.
Yes, we've been doing a lot to start showcasing that as well.
So does he have like any different techniques that we are going to see or anything, or is it going to be pretty much just like on point with what you've created?
No, his art style is very different from mine. So generally what I do is I draw everything on paper and then I trace it digitally, just to make it look a little more crisp. He is actually going to be doing everything on paper. And then he is going to probably be doing a lot of watercolor. So he's more of a painter and a pen and paper artist. So we're going to see a pretty dynamic shift in art styles, but I think that it's important to include things like that because it shows that the story's being told by people. You know what I mean? I think that when with a lot of comics and a lot of web comics, the styles can be lost, and everything just ends up looking the same after a while. And that's not to say that every webcomic looks the same. It's just I've noticed that some of the really popular ones, they all tend to kind of gravitate towards the same themes. And that's not a bad thing. You want to do whatever makes it easiest for you. But I personally feel like if there's multiple people working on a project who all have the ability to draw or the ability to showcase their art, I think that should be done.
Yeah, I really like that too. I think that's a cool way to kind of tie both parties into it.
Yeah, and I think it'll be an interesting, shock to the system. It's not going to look the same every time you read it, so you can go and read, the first arc that I did, and then you can go back and you can get to the second arc, and it's just like, whoa, hold on, is this the same story? And then it's like, wait, what's happening here? And then it just kind of, I feel like it will want to pull you in more because you're going to see that it's a different, and it's going to be a totally different art style, but it still is going to be the same plots, the same characters, the same story being told, just being told from like a slightly different side. So I think it's going to be very interesting the way it'll tie together.
No, that's really cool. Real quick, we have Alan over on YouTube. The stream is buffering here and there. Not sure if that's on his end or not. Kavin actually has some storms going on right now, so that could be affecting the camera quality. If it's on my end though, then it could be something on going on my end. But just to kind of give you that heads up, I mean it could be either or. But we're gonna work through. We're already doing awesome halfway through, and so I gotta ask you: is there gonna be any sort of explanation for the different art styles, or are you kind of just gonna full send it?
So we're gonna definitely full send it. That's always, I feel like that's the most fun. But for sure, like if people have questions about it, if they're confused as to why it happens, I'm just gonna be like, well, we decided to switch it up. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
It makes it easier for the both of us, and it allows us both to kind of tell the story our way without really changing the plot or anything like that. We're still getting the point across. We're just doing it in a way where, it's more personal to each of us as an individual.
So, for as far as like scripting and storylines, are they gonna be? Is this gonna be something where you look over like his take on the script as well to kind of just make sure they're coinciding with one another?
Absolutely, yeah. Because we worked on all of the plots and everything together. So obviously, we want to make sure that they're cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
So before anything is published, we're gonna be making sure that we're cross-referencing to make sure that our plot and our story and our script makes sense, because we don't want to be finding out later on that we posted something and it's like, oh crap, that's not what we wanted it to be, or now
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't make sense because we did this instead of this. So we've spent many hours going back and forth and working out those little nuances, because we knew that we were going to be doing this from the very beginning. So I figured the best way to address it is to just, kind of lay it out all at once. And then as we go through it, just double check and make sure that we're still doing what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like how you're incorporating his takes as well in script writing. It seems like it's gonna like add like a whole different like personality to the writing and to the story. I really like that concept a whole lot. What type can you give us any sort of hints or indication of like what type of story he's going to be constructing, or where we could see his take go?
Yeah, so his is going to be very dark. So as I mentioned before, this is definitely a story for people who like Berserk. And I know, as I mentioned in the last interview, Berserk is his favorite series. So when we get into this arc, there's going to be a lot more heart-wrenching scenarios. It's not going to be a slow burn, like the first part of it was. And
Mm-hmm.
mine did have some intensity. It had some scenes where, some things happened that were probably unexpected. It had, a part where the main character started undergoing some changes and then, kind of came back from it. But this part is going to be where, everything is on the table. And obviously we don't want to do too much right at the beginning, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a major catalyst for what goes on for the rest of the series. So it's going to be a very important arc. And that's why I definitely trust him to do it, because I feel like he could probably tell it better than I could.
No, I like how it's definitely adding like a whole nother layer to like the darkness, and how his way of breaking into it's going to be different than yours. It adds like a whole different sense to it almost. So I think right now would be a perfect time. Let's go ahead and check out chapter 17 in its entirety and see where things are leading up. Now, you said you're going to be working until chapter 25 for the first arc, or?
Yes, the first arc ends at chapter 25, and that is when we will begin our segue into the second arc.
Okay.
And I don't want to give too much away about that, but there is some promo art that is in the works that we will be releasing once chapter 25 has finished.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So let's check out 17. And then just know that in a couple chapters, there's going to be some pretty big changes happening. But all right, so we are looking at the cover for chapter 17, Residents. So what's going on here? It looks like they're in a marketplace, a lot of action going on.
So this is kind of like a modern AU type of thing that my husband did for the cover page. They're in an arcade.
Okay.
And they're kind of just like messing around. So we have on the far left
Oh, your mic cut
Sorry,
out.
I accidentally muted my mic.
I was like, some words have to be coming out at some point. I don't know.
No, that was me. That was a mistake. On the far left, crouched on the ground in the red shirt, that's actually a Shar from the first few chapters. She's kind of hanging out at the arcade with them. She's at like a robot claw machine. And then we have Kagan and a newer character actually sitting on the ground in the front. So he is being released in this chapter, so you'll see him. Inside of the claw machine is Kasoko, which is the little one-eyed demon from chapter 8 when they were introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And then Akiru is kind of looking at him like, why are you in the claw machine? Please get out. And then off to the far side is the monk and another character that is released in this chapter. And then in the background is actually kind of an allusion to one of the villains, but we haven't introduced him yet, so he's kind of just a shadow.
Okay.
But so it's kind of cluing into some things that will be happening.
A lot of foreshadowing. I like that. I like that. So let's go ahead and start checking it out. So it looks like we have a little bit of exposition happening.
Yep. So that's just kind of following up with chapter 16. What happened at the end of chapter 16 is the monk found the book that they had, and he kind of showed it to them. And Akiru is confused. He's like, how did he find the book? And Kagan's just explaining, it was the only thing that survived when your body caught on fire. So he wants to know what's going on with it.
And it looks like we find out that the book is actually demonic as well.
Yes. And then that is where the one character that is on the front cover, that is where she is introduced. Her name is Arduva. She is an Amazon.
Blushing there too. I love that.
Yes, she's a sweetheart. I honestly really love her. She was designed by my husband. I think she's a wonderful character. She has a great personality, and she's one of the more happy characters.
Mm-hmm. Is that, for a webtoon that's kind of dark and kind of the opposite from happy? Like, was that like a harder character to write? Like someone who was always happy?
Not really, just because at this point in the story, like no one really knows what direction it's gonna go. So at the introducing a happier character when there hasn't really been a whole lot of chaos yet isn't challenging. What's going to be challenging is when it starts getting rough, making sure that she maintains that disposition. So that's why it's nice that I have another person working on it with me, because I have a tendency to kind of make everyone a cynic.
I love this little introduction too. So this is the monk, I presume?
That is the monk. His name is Akriakles. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. It's a Greek name. But he is the monk, and the Amazon Arduva is his beloved. So I love
this little introduction, the little plop.
Yeah, she's right on the head. I always thought that would be funny.
So it looks like there's someone behind them too. I was gonna say in the background, like observing them. It looks like.
Yes. So what we have is like the little cartoon dudes. In the corner we have Kagan just kind of back there, and then Akiru. I didn't draw any details because I wanted them to look like they were small and far away. But then hiding behind the wall is one of the other characters that was on the cover page who's being introduced. And he is going to be a significant character as well.
So there's a lot of rumbling about them waking up too. So it looks like this is something big's about to happen. It looks like almost.
Yes, there is some stuff coming for sure. So the character that it has just been introduced, his name is Godbrand, which will be shown later in the chapter. He doesn't know very many humans. He hasn't interacted with very many humans. So seeing humans aside from the monk is very rare for him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very curious at the moment, especially since Ikiru is kind of a weird human. So he wants to know what's going on, and he's just interested in everything that's happening. And then he found it even more curious that he was brought there with another demon. So he's just like, what's happening here? What's this scene? Like, I need to know.
And then it looks like this other one wants to meet them. Like, so I'm certain you will find them amusing too. So this is a rather interesting confrontation, it looks like.
Yes, so that's Kasoko. He was the one that was their guide through the woods. And he is kind of encouraging Godbrand to come out from behind the wall and say hello. And he's just like, I thought they were funny. I think you'll find them funny. You just, come say hello, come meet them. And it kind of goes from there. But at first he doesn't want to do it, but he does.
And then they notice that he's in fact another demon and has a unique quality about him, a tail. So what type of demon is he? What can you tell us a little bit more about his character design?
So he is half fish. He is a fish demon. His mother is a koi demon, and his father is like a warrior.
So it looks like this is where we get our official introduction to Godbrand, and it looks like the monk right here is still wearing his interesting helmet.
Yes, it's his favorite headgear. That's why he doesn't have hair.
I don't blame him though. I don't blame him, and it looks like she's not too opposed to it either. We see some heart flashing right up here. So what's going on with Godbrand though? It looks like he's kind of like down in the dumps. It looks like he's a little bit out of his element maybe.
So that is Ikiru.
Okay. My apologies.
Yes, that's okay. He's kind of he's still adjusting to this new world. So he's just like, everywhere I turn, there's this new creature that I now have to get used to. And the kind of basis behind that goes back to him growing up being sheltered and not knowing about all of these other creatures. So now that he's encountering them in real life, he's like, I don't know how to process this, like,
don't blame him though.
Like, just like 2 weeks ago, I met an umbrella with a hat, and now I have to deal with this fish boy. Like, what do I do?
And one thing too is I only had the chance to read, I think, the first like 1 or 2 chapters. So we kind of did a pretty big time jump in between. So this is my first time seeing this character. So that's kind of why I was thrown off a little bit for anyone that's listening. So that way people in the comments don't try to call me out.
Well, you should definitely read the rest because it will fill in a lot of gaps for you.
So right here is another interesting interaction too. So we see these two getting out of bed still. And then some radiant and excitement going on in this corner.
Yeah, so Kasoka's always he's very cheerful. They're always excited to interact, and they're just like, oh hey, I want you to meet my friends. And then Godbrand is kind of just like, I don't really want to be here. I don't really know what's going on. I wasn't ready to meet anybody. And then Kagan and Ikiru just don't really know how to act. Like they're just like, I don't want to be rude, but like, what do I do?
And I like the attention
silence.
to detail with the tail wrapped around the leg right here too. Even in their smaller like chibi-ish forms, you still maintain that detail.
Yes, I try like when if it's something that's not really necessary, then sometimes I might leave it out. Like when I do their little bubble figures, I won't draw their hair or anything like that. But when it's something like that, when it's that nuanced, but it's important to the character, I will keep it in. And that's something that will be shown throughout the story, actually, is that he does that pretty frequently. So I wanted to make sure that detail was maintained to show that is something that's going to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. So right here we see him kind of questioning if he's okay. Who's he talking about?
So he's talking about Godbrand. So because Godbrand's kind of just been standing there, not really doing anything, not saying anything, just kind of standing there staring. So Kagan's kind of just like, is he all right? What's going on here?
And then hold on. Sometimes I gotta refresh the page. Gets into like a loading circle. And then we've been raising him since he lost his parent. Or is this no, this is page 5.
Yeah, it skipped a page.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
There we go. So basically Godbrand is mute.
Okay.
So he just doesn't, he's capable, like he's extremely intelligent and he's capable of understanding all different types of speech, but he himself cannot speak.
So is it hard to like convey that, the mannerisms of being mute, like in a comic?
It can be challenging considering, as somebody who can speak, it's definitely a different perspective. I kind of take a little bit of it from my husband describing his experiences with his younger brother. His younger brother is severely autistic and was nonverbal for the first several years of his life. So we kind of are basing it off of that as if he were nonverbal. And not to say that Godbrand is autistic, because that has not been confirmed nor denied, but he is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
So generally when he is interacting, he will either use he'll either write stuff down or he will kind of make signals with his hands. It's like their own kind of ASL sort of.
Mm-hmm.
We just haven't actually gotten so far as to break down what that's going to look like. But he's also a telepath with certain people, and that will be revealed later on.
Okay. So, I mean, with certain people, like what type of scenario enables that? Or is that something to yet be revealed?
So I'm not gonna shed too much light on it because I think it will give away a pretty significant plot point. But I can say that there are other characters that have already been introduced that he's able to communicate with.
Okay, no, I gotcha. And we won't dig too deep because we love getting the exclusive peeks, but we never want to spoil anything. So we kind of get another look too that he's been raised since he lost his parents. So Godbrand's been through some hardship. Yes,
and there's a little bit. I tried to be clear with my wording in the sense that he lost his parents. He didn't, his parents aren't gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're lost. So he doesn't know where they are. And that's something that is, people aren't going to know until later on. And as you read, you'll notice every character has their own font. So that's kind of how I've been breaking up the dialogue. So, because at the bottom where it says, I wonder if these humans can help me, that's Godbrand's thoughts.
Okay.
That's him thinking I wonder if they can help me in regards to finding his parents.
No, and so right here you could definitely see this is 2 different types of fonts as well. So someone different was speaking this part out. I like that too. Was that challenging for you at all to kind of find fonts that flowed with one another?
It was a little bit tricky because part of it too was I wanted to pick a font that would suit the character as well.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a character that was generally more extravagant or boisterous, I wanted to pick a font that would suit that. We have a character that, as you read through it, you will see he was briefly introduced and he is constantly drunk. So I wanted to give him an exaggerated font that would reflect on him being drunk. You could see it and you would know that, he was being loud and he was being obnoxious without even having to, be there.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you had a character who was more quiet or softer spoken, I wanted to pick a font that was less in your face. But I still wanted them to look readable on a page.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I did a pretty okay job at that. It was definitely challenging because I had a limited number of fonts to work with. But I feel like as far as the overall flow, I think it fits together. I think it works well. And I didn't want the font to be the same across the board. I feel like that can get very mundane to read.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very tricky keeping track of who's saying what. So I felt that that would be the easiest way to differentiate, especially when the character's face isn't on the page.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and I really like the way you went about it. I think, at least from what we experienced going through it, that you were able to really nail it. For everyone that's watching right now, here is a quick look at all of the social media platforms, and you can find all of these linked below in the comments or in the description, depending on what platform you're on. Now, do you want to give a shout out to your Patreon?
Yes, we actually recently revamped our Patreon, so all of our tiers now have new rewards and new updates available. So anyone who signs up for our Patreon will have the opportunity to actually influence some of our future content. Like one of our tiers, a couple of our tiers actually, I forget exactly what they are. I did this, I want to say about a month or so ago. A couple of the tiers, if we get a certain number of patrons, they'll have the opportunity to enter their art to be put on merchandise. And obviously like that artist in particular, like they would get the merch for free, and they would be able to they would be able to claim the rights to the art, of course, and it would be like a limited run type of thing, but it would, they would have the opportunity to have their art made into merchandise for the series. And that's actually another update that I forgot to mention earlier. Today has been a whirlwind. But we actually are working on developing new merchandise for the series to kind of help fund us in terms of production. So I'm currently, as I mentioned in the last video, I've been drawing it with a laptop and my finger, and that has not changed. So I'm working on saving up for like an iPad and things like that, but it's been very challenging. So my goal is to kind of use the merchandise to leverage that. We have a TeePublic shop that has some designs available on t-shirts, laptop cases, mugs, buttons, things of that nature. And then I'm also working on developing some prototype keychains with some art designs as well. And those will be available once I have the samples back in. I did order some a few weeks ago. And those are going to be available for purchase probably through Store Envy. I generally use them because they have more reasonable fees. For those of you out there who use Etsy, I know they charge out the butt for fees.
Yeah.
Check out Store Envy.
I see a lot of people using Ko-fi as well, or Ko-fi.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't delved much into it yet, but I'm thinking that might also be an option for me. I'm still kind of experimenting on what I think will be the best course of action, but I just feel like it's going to be the easiest way for me to finance the growth of the series, because right now I'm able to do at least, enough to tell the story, but I feel like I could make it so much more. And I definitely don't want to continue to be restricted. So I've been looking into upgrading my equipment so that I can actually have proper drawing software and a proper tablet and things of that nature to make it more enticing to read, because I know that it's not always the easiest to read through something that doesn't have a whole lot of flash to it, and it's kind of just black and white. But I've been doing my best with it, with what I can, and I'm hoping that people will see the the artistry, I guess, that I'm trying to put into it, but that I just don't quite have what I need for it.
So what's next outside I Have a Demon? Is this like your primary focus for now, or is there any other projects on the horizon?
So this is my passion project. However, I do have another story that I came up with a few years ago that is unrelated, but is in the same universe. And it is called Iron Empress. And it's about a princess who her kingdom gets taken over, and she kind of has to work against everybody to get her kingdom back. and I wanted to have a character I wanted to have a story with a strong female lead. So it came to my mind after watching a lot of Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea behind it was just that, it was kind of based on like growing up before knowing I was transgender. Like I had two older brothers, I got pushed around a lot, and I wanted to create a story where the character that's getting pushed around pushes back.
Yeah.
And it kind of reflects on how I wished I had pushed back when I was a kid. I wished that I had defended myself more. Maybe things would have been different for me. So it kind of takes into that, and it kind of is like younger, confused with their identity, not knowing what's going on in their life, me. But that's been something that I've been kind of working on behind the scenes as well. And it's not nearly as far along. I've just been working on the scripting for that one.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually I would like to start working on that as well. And it like I said, it does take place in one of the kingdoms within the universe of I Have a Demon, but it is a completely separate story.
I like how it's in the same universe, but it's its own standalone, story without having, any real like deep connection with I Have a Demon. And I love how deep it is, like a symbolism for what you went through. Wow, that sounds like it's such an impactful read, and I can't wait to see not only this get finished and your husband get a chance to kind of put things in his perspective, but then you come out with that comic as well. It's just sounds like it's gonna be like an emotional like roller coaster.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Honestly, I want people to read what we're creating and feel those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're putting so much emotion into creating it, and we want people to get those emotions back. Even if it doesn't reach a lot of people, as long as it reaches somebody and makes a difference, makes an impact on somebody, like that's what I want. And that's another reason why like we expanded onto global comics, because I know that the platform is doing nothing but growing.
Yeah.
Which gives us an opportunity to do nothing but grow. So I'm really excited for where we're going to go from here, and what's going to happen from here. I may be on a little bit of a hiatus coming up just because of the fact that I'm in the process of buying a house.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. So that's a little exciting. I just applied for the mortgage the other day, so that may delay the remaining chapters for this arc. However, once everything is settled and we're moved in and everything is kind of back to normal again, I will resume working on the remaining chapters. So it'll probably be another few months before anything else comes out, but there will still be some things here and there that we'll be coming out with, like some promo art and some little recreational things here and there.
No, congratulations. That is so awesome.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming back on the show to not only break down chapter 17, but give us a nice deep look at, the changes that are going to be happening, and kind of using this as a platform to kind of get that news out there. That means a lot to me. I love when people think of the show as like a means of doing that, because that's exactly, where I'm trying to be within the indie community. So thank you for choosing this platform for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure. It's always nice to have an opportunity to talk about the goings on, because I feel like the only people I really geek out about with it are like my husband and like our best friend and maybe a couple of other people. So it's nice to have the chance to really just like get it out there, because I'm like, I want to tell everybody these things, but like I don't want to give anything away.
And I mean, keeping it geekly is the best place to geek out. So I mean, it was only natural. So before we end things, you've been on the show before, so you know how this goes. We always like to ask one question in particular that will serve a greater purpose for anyone new who might be watching, or even if they're old, they might be able to take benefit from it. So with this time around, I want to ask a little bit different of a question for anyone that's watching, and maybe they're having trouble getting like any sort of like longevity to their comic, anything past a couple issues, like within the script writing. What type of advice would you offer them to kind of help them get the most out of their script, to be able to make it more than just one issue, to help kind of flesh out that story and give it a little bit more?
Embrace your individuality. And the reason I say that, and I know it might sound a little bit odd, but the reason I say that is, like I said, all of my stories have been pulled from personal experience. If you can somehow find a way to take something that you've gone through, or something that you've seen someone go through, and you can incorporate that in your tale, you can make it so much more impactful. You can stretch the story so much further, because dealing with that trauma alone is a story in and of itself. And if you can make the story out of the recovery, that I think is a really good way to make a story longer. As an example, a lot of the characters in my story, one of the reasons why the plot is so long is because a lot of it is based on the characters dealing with recovering from traumas that they've undergone. And I won't give away too much, but like my main character completely unfolds. So you see throughout the story, like, multiple transformations of multiple different characters, and you can't, in order to get that, you have to have a long story. So I personally feel like the easiest way to get a story with some longevity, with some grip, with something that is going to pull several issues, is if you can make it something that incorporates recovery or trauma or some kind of adventure that someone has gone through in their life.
No, I think that is a remarkable piece of advice. I know, having 17 chapters out already with the goal of having 25, you would be one of the better, people to ask that question to, because you obviously have been writing, stuff that has longevity to it. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think adding your own flair to it, adding your own personality to it, and what you've gone through really can give you a lot to work with, a lot to pull with, because you're drawing off experience there instead of just grasping for straws.
Right. Exactly. You've been through it, or you've seen somebody go through it, so more realistically what it's like, instead of kind of just being like, oh, I'm going to give this person this, but then have absolutely no idea how to connect it to real life.
No, absolutely. And, one of the best things we, find ourselves drawing to more and more is real life experiences that helps you get more immersed within the comic and the reading experience. So yeah, I think it really goes hand in hand. And that was a really deep response. I really appreciate that. Kavin, thank you so much for swinging by, breaking down your news, I Have a Demon, Chapter 17, and what to expect in the future. This has been an awesome show. Everyone watching, I hope you've been having an awesome Tuesday night, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.